Welcome to the League of Women Voters and City Club of Central Oregon 2022 primary candidate forums, two organizations that are passionately nonpartisan. I am Carol Leshy, president of the League of Women Voters of Deschutes County. Our candidate forums are conducted according to League of Women Voters guidelines. All candidates who have filed in their race are invited to participate. In the interest of fairness, we do not let an RSVP of regrets cancel a forum. After originally agreeing to participate, Congressman Kurt Schrader advised us on April 12th that he had a scheduling conflict. We are continuing with the forum today with congressional candidate Jamie McLeod Skinner. We hope you enjoy this forum and come away with knowledge about the issues that are so important in today's society. Democracy is not a spectator sport. Use your voice and vote.
Good evening, and thank you for taking the time to learn more about the candidates running to represent you. My name is Kim Gammond, and I am the Executive Director at the City Club of Central Oregon. If you'd like to learn more about tonight's forum or any of our upcoming forums, please visit us at cityclubco.org. At City Club, we are working to build a conscious and civic-minded community that results in responsible civic engagement. We do this through community forums and utilizing the tools of civility to promote productive and safe conversation. You can learn more at cityclubco.org.
Hi, I'm Aaron Switzer, publisher of the Source Weekly and moderator for the Congressional District 5 Democrat candidates. U.S. Representative Congressional District 5 is a newly mapped district in Oregon based on the 2020 census. CD5 includes portions of Benton, Clackamas, Deschutes, Jefferson, Lynn, Marion, and Multnomah counties. As Carol mentioned, last week, Congressman Schrader declined to participate, so we will conduct the forum with candidate Jamie McLeod Skinner. The format is 1 minute for opening remarks, 1.5 minutes for each question, and 2 minutes closing remarks. Questions have been submitted by the public and screened by the League of Women Voters. And without further ado, let's get started. Jamie, for question number one, if elected, what would be your top three priorities?
She gets a minute and a half.
Oh.
My top three priorities are helping Oregonians recover from the COVID economy, and that involves everything from making housing more affordable, healthcare more affordable, including prescription drugs, and I hope to talk about that a bit later. Also, childcare, investing in education, and all those things to help people get back on their feet and really get our economy going again. The other key thing is addressing the climate crisis that we're facing. Oregonians are having to flee our homes because of wildfire. Just last year, I spent about half the year working in wildfire recovery, managing a city, helping it get back on its feet after being destroyed by wildfire. We're also seeing our family farms losing our small family farms because of the drought. And so making sure we're changing the trajectory that we're on, as well as helping people prepare. Part of my role now with the state is to help in emergency preparedness to address these type of crises we're facing, as well as to make sure there's appropriate response. And then also protecting our democracy. And a big piece of that is, in addition to the right to vote, also making sure that we have the right to represent, and it's not, our politics and our elections aren't bought or sold. I am running against someone, and unfortunately he declined to be here to talk about his record, but he voted against the original Build Back Better. He's taken over $8 million in corporate PAC money, and he stripped out sustainable energy programs from the infrastructure bill, and he's also taken extensive monies from corporate PACs that have driven his votes.
Jamie, what is the proper role of the U.S. Congress in addressing pandemics?
Well, it's First, it's to try to prevent them from happening. And then preparedness is a huge piece of that. So the emergency preparedness, and then also responses to communities when communities are having to deal with the crisis. Last year when I was working in emergency recovery and wildfire recovery in Talent, when a third of the homes had been burnt down, I worked closely with FEMA. There's some opportunities for improvement. The individuals themselves worked very hard to help the communities, but there was a process in place that made it difficult and was clumsy and it didn't allow communities to respond as effectively and to get the help they needed on the ground. in a timely manner. So Congress's role is really to look at the crises we can avoid, things like the climate crisis that we're fighting, and change the trajectory that we're on. And then it's also to appropriately fund the preparedness and the recovery piece. You know, I mentioned earlier that I'm running against someone who has taken over $8 million in corporate PAC money. I actually don't take any corporate PAC money. I have not since I was first elected to a city council in 2004. And I'm not in this campaign either. And he's taken over 650,000 in big pharma funds, and then has not stepped up to provide the resources we need to lower prescription drug prices. He's taken over 300,000 from oil and gas and not helped to tackle climate change.
Jamie, how would you improve in these times public confidence in the federal election process?
This is a huge issue, and we're hearing it from across the political divide. There's a couple things, but first and foremost, getting big money out of politics, so that's no longer seen as a pay-to-play type of endeavor. That's a challenge I'm facing in this race up against my opponent. But the other piece is just focusing on the problems at hand. We're seeing too many of the buzzwords, frankly, from both parties being generated in Washington, D.C., and not enough showing up in rural and urban areas to listen to what people are facing, the challenges that Americans and Oregonians are facing, and helping to address them and working together to address them. I can tell you from having traveled throughout Oregon in the urban and rural areas, the bottom line is that the vast majority of us simply want to put a roof over our head and food on our table. We want to be able to provide opportunities for our kids. We want to be able to provide healthcare to our families when they're sick, and that's including having our prescription drugs be affordable. We need solutions there, and we don't have a champion for that right now. And then also, we don't want to have to flee our homes from wildfire. And so those are the realities people are experiencing on the ground. And right now, coming out of the COVID economy, people are desperate. So many working families are not able to get back to work because of the cost of housing, healthcare, and also not having access to childcare. Those are the investments that were part of the original Build Back Better plan, and something I would have voted for and my opponent voted against.
59 members of Congress have violated a law designed to stop insider trading and prevent conflicts of interest. Do you feel members of Congress should be prohibited from trading stocks while in office?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would not only support, I would co-sponsor and also champion the current bipartisan bill that is looking to prevent the trading of stocks. I'm Kurt Schrader, who I'm running against, and who initially agreed to be here and then since declined. He has traded, I think it's 1.1 million in stocks last year. He does not have a blind trust, and also started trading stocks right after the infrastructure bill went through. To give a sports analogy, this is like having someone who sets the rules to a game, is the referee, can bet on teams, and also be paid by teams. And that's that corporate PAC money that he takes for campaigns. We need a level playing field. This goes back to the question about building and establishing public trust. And we need to be able to make sure that everyone has equal access to resources that are available. Our politics has become, and seen as having become a pay-to-play type of endeavor where people can be paid off by corporate PAC money and then vote that way. You know, everyone, Oregonians have received, or folks in the 5th Congressional District have received a ton of flyers from Kurt Schrader, who's talking about his efforts to lower prescription drug prices. The facts of the matter are that he was the deciding vote against lowering prescription drug prices for all prescription drugs just last September. It's critically important in terms of building trust that we have people who tell us the truth.
Jamie, this is a two-part question. What is your position on requiring universal completed background checks for firearms and assault weapons? And should privately made firearms be regulated?
I think I would agree on both of those and support both of those. And here's the bottom line is when you talk to gun owners, the vast majority are very supportive of common sense gun safety laws. My dad hunted to put food on the table. My stepdad hunted to put food on the table. And so, especially in rural parts of the country, there's a lot of folks who own guns to hunt. And this is not a conflict of guns versus no guns. This is an issue of common sense safety issues and safety measures. And when you talk to the vast majority of gun owners, they actually agree with these types of protections. And unfortunately, our politics has been set up such that there's this really this has become a hot button issue where it's really truly something we can agree on. Now, how we move forward on legislation and getting that type of common sense safety legislation in place is really working across the political divide and bringing on board rural folks, Republicans as well, who agree with these concepts, because we all want to keep our communities safe. We all want to keep our kids safe. Folks who agree with these concepts, who also help lead the charge in developing and championing this legislation, because it's simply about safety.
Jamie, with Americans concerned over rising fuel costs, would you support legislation like the Green New Deal, which would help eliminate the need for fossil fuel dependence?
So when in politics, one of the challenges we've had are buzzwords, and a lot of folks get triggered either in a positive or negative way by the concept of the Green New Deal. Here's what it essentially is talking about. It's talking about setting us up for a sustainable energy grid, which we must do both for to get us off this climate crisis and this destructive path we're on in terms of our climate, frankly, but also for energy security and energy independence. So it's a concept to do that work while at the same time bringing along and partnering with working people and with labor. It's a really good concept that has now been demonized since it originally came out. So as I say with a lot of things, and making sure everyone has access to physical and mental health care. I don't care what we call it. Let's just do it. In this regard, transitioning to a sustainable energy economy and getting people on board and not leaving working families behind while we make that transition, I'm all for it. These are really important concepts. And frankly, sometimes we have to step back from the buzzwords because that's what people start arguing over. But let's agree on that big picture, because wildfire doesn't check party affiliation when it's burning through an area. And so we need to work together to address the climate crisis. The concepts behind the Green New Deal are really strong concepts, but those are investments we need to make, but we have to find a way to talk about it so that we can get the job done.
With inflation rising, why do you think the country is experiencing this 40-year high rate, and how can Congress work to lower inflation?
We need to get people back to work. And that's that piece I mentioned before about this real focus on helping families and helping our country rebound from the COVID economy. We've seen a dismantling of the social infrastructure over the last few decades. The original Build Back Better bill, which has included both the social and physical infrastructure, I would have voted for. My opponent voted against. And it was those commitments, those investments in helping working people get back to work. I've spoken with folks throughout the district who are not able to go back to work because they can't afford childcare, or not able to take a construction job because it starts early in the morning. They're a single parent and they have nowhere to take their kid. Even if they have access to standard childcare, they don't have a place they can take their kid that early. So all these investments in affordable housing and making sure we have people have access to both physical and mental health care, childcare, investments in education. These are the things that get us back, get the economic engine going again. And we should raise the federal minimum wage. We've done that here in Oregon, but people can't afford to go back to work with the discrepancies we're seeing across the country. So those investments and investing in our workforce and investing in our economy is really the way to address the challenge we're seeing right now with inflation and getting costs back under control and getting our supply chain in line again.
Jamie, what responsibility, if any, does the U.S. have for political, social, or environmental refugees from other countries?
So having worked in refugee resettlement myself, and I did that in Silicon Valley after having worked for the International Rescue Committee in repairing schools and hospitals, managing the reconstruction of schools and hospitals in a post-war environment. I got to see firsthand what folks have dealt with in a post-war environment, similar to what we're seeing in Ukraine now, how horrific that is, and then helping people get back on their feet and also engage in a new country. You know, there's, I think, an international responsibility. I think it's a fair share responsibility with other countries, but we have, I believe, a responsibility to support refugees who come to our country. There is a process in place, and there's a very rigorous process in place. And so the folks who raise concerns about safety, those issues are addressed. And then helping people get a kickstart and helping people just get back on their feet so that they become self-sufficient. This is the work that we did. And there's often concern about folks coming in, but think about how refugees and immigrants have really built and strengthened our economy. One example is Andy Grove. He's the co-founder of Intel, which is now a major corporation that not only provides equipment for computers that many of us are using, but also is a major part of our economic engine nationally. That's the kind of investment we have, investing in people who then turn around, become members of our community, and invest back in our country.
Jamie, what do you feel is the role, if any, that the federal government should have in regulating the electoral processes of the states?
Well, states manage their own elections. However, we also have to make sure that there's a fair share. So the John Lewis voting rights bill, I think, is a perfect example of ensuring that people have access to the ballot box. That's important federal legislation that I would support. We also have, again, this matter of money in politics. Too often right now, we're seeing pay-to-play politics where money's being dumped into candidates and getting them elected. There's not a level playing field in terms of folks who are running for office. So again, I'm not taking corporate PAC money. I'm running against someone who's taken over $8 million over his 25-year career in corporate PAC money, and his votes have followed the money he's taken. So the 650,000 he's taken from big pharma has resulted in his no vote against lowering prescription drug prices, because ultimately pharmaceutical companies, and he's a big pharma heir himself, that's how his family made their fortune. He had inherited those funds. It's about raising profits, and that is what folks getting gouged essentially at the drugstore. And that profit going into then electing someone who then holds the line and votes against lowering prescription drug prices. The same is true with addressing the climate crisis. 300,000 has been invested in has been given to my opponent, and he's turned around and stripped out sustainable energy programs from the infrastructure bill and from Build Back Better.
Touching more on climate, Central Oregon became familiar with the concept of the heat dome last summer. How can the federal government mitigate the effects of this type of climate change that's already occurring, such as wildfires, flooding, drought, and more of these severe storms?
Well, and I saw this firsthand last year when I led wildfire recovery in a town that a third of its homes and businesses were burned down. When I came back to Central Oregon, my wife and I almost had to flee our home because of the Grandview fire that came up here in Central Oregon. So this is very, very real. We need to be investing in a renewable energy grid that helps us to change the trajectory that we're on. We're on a very destructive path right now with our taxpayer dollars today being invested and spent on dirty fuels. We need to be investing very heavily in changing that trajectory, keeping the grid whole as we make that transition, and then also helping in emergency preparedness and in the emergency response piece, so that we are addressing the crises and helping to offset the cycle that we're on and the trajectory that we're on. Again, I'm running against someone who not only has not done that work, but purposely stripped out renewable energy programs from the infrastructure bill and from the Build Back Better agenda that was moving through Congress. That and it's, you can see where his funding has come from and the votes he's taken. That kind of pay to play politics is really hurting us and is very short-sighted. So, it's in DC, folks may have seen the wildfire and the smoke from our wildfires, but those of us who experienced it right here in either having to flee their homes, fear fleeing their homes, or even breathing the smoky air is something that is very real to those of us who've worked on the ground to address this issue.
Moving now to a global topic. Do you believe that the United Nations should be strengthened to deal better with worldwide pandemic? What's their role?
Well, the UN plays an important role in engaging countries in conversation around the issues and challenges that we're facing. And an international pandemic like we're seeing with COVID is a great topic for that type of international conversation. In terms of individual countries deciding to step up and providing resources and working in partnership, that becomes secondary to that conversation. But the UN playing a role in engaging and countries in conversations around our common challenges makes absolute sense.
Staying with COVID here, as a result of our experience with COVID-19, what changes would you like to see in the national healthcare system to address it?
I think that the Affordable Care Act was a good step forward, but I think we really need to look at comprehensive change in our healthcare system to ensure that everyone has full access. And I mean that both financially and the physical access, because this is a big deal in rural areas, to physical and mental health care. And that includes dental and vision. Other countries are way ahead of us. We're essentially embarrassing ourselves by not stepping up and addressing this and in providing the resources. There are cost-effective ways that we can do this. And I think that's the commitment we need to make. We need the leadership and the overall commitment and also the pressure from voters to make sure that happens. Part of access to healthcare is also prescription drug prices. So again, I'm running against someone who you'll have received a ton of glossy flyers talking about this, but the fact of the matter is, after 25 years, he's prevented us from moving forward on affordable prescription drug prices, and including his own deciding vote in committee to prevent Medicare from negotiating all prescription drug prices to bring those costs down. Those are the real challenges that Oregonians are seeing, Americans are seeing. And when drug prices are going up, people's other ability to pay for other things goes down. I was just talking to a woman in Albany a couple of weeks ago who was talking about her Parkinson's and the drugs she needs to manage that. The costs are going way up and she can't afford it. So the things you'll hear talked about are some of these, a bill that covers a few drugs, but it leaves off 500 other prescription drugs. We need comprehensive drug reform and comprehensive healthcare reform to make sure all Americans have access to a baseline of affordable and accessible healthcare.
Can you hear me again now? Sorry about that.
Yeah.
What changes, if any, to immigration law would you want to pursue and why?
We need comprehensive immigration reform. And this, if you look a couple decades back, Republicans were championing this issue. We now, the Republican view on this has gone so extreme and so far to the right, it's really gotten in the way of a really rational and reasonable conversation on this. We need to have comprehensive immigration reform similar to a course correction made back in the 80s to allow those who are who are essentially Americans, who are members of our community, who are contributing to our economy, who are paying taxes, to make sure there's a pathway to citizenship for our friends and neighbors and family members. That's really important, as well as look at opportunities for our economy to other opportunities for workforce investments, for temporary work, for long-term work. And this is everything from our ag community to our high-tech community as well. We're really missing out on opportunities for our communities and for our economy. I'm running against someone who voted against the Dreamer Act back in 2010. I thought that was unconscionable. If you have kids who are brought to this country by others and then are raised and are members of our community, grow up, many who served in the military, who are serving in essential services, then we need to recognize folks, Americans as Americans. I remember meeting a guy who just had gone through, was 1 month away from getting his nursing degree in a time we're facing a nursing crisis. And he was a dreamer, but was didn't have access and was at the wrong place at the wrong time. There was conflict with others, and he ended up getting picked up and getting locked away. When here was someone who, with our communities needed, he had done everything right, but he just didn't have laws that recognized him as a member of our community.
The pandemic has exacerbated the homeless situation in the U.S. What can Congress do to address the large number of homeless at this stage?
Well, we need to make some serious investments. And from when I was first elected in 2004, I've always said that I don't believe in spending public money. I believe in investing it. And this is a perfect opportunity where we have a low housing supply. We also have high need. Investments, more aggressive investments through our infrastructure program, and targeted resources through our community block grant programs, the CDBG programs, to communities, so that there's flexibility on the ground, but that there's potential for housing development. I'm actually currently working on an affordable home ownership project. I'm facilitating the conversation here in Oregon, in a small community where people are recovering from wildfire and need the housing and also the access to housing. You know, the city of Bend is doing some really creative things around housing. Providing the resources to enable them to do that work is really critically important. So the federal government, Congress holds the purse strings, and the federal government has an opportunity to make those investments now so that people get access to housing. Affordable housing is a huge issue throughout the district, throughout our state, really throughout our country. But folks up in the metro area, and actually in all cities right now, are seeing, tent cities pop up. It's heartbreaking when we know that we can be making investments, and it's in housing, but it's also in some of those other issues. Mental health care is a big one. So those other investments and educational opportunities help to also address the housing crisis that we're seeing.
For this next question, Jamie, I wish we had half an hour, but we're going to stay with the current format. What do you think can be done, if anything, about social media and the proliferation of lies and false conspiracy and information?
Yeah, well, I'd love to be asking you this question, since you're in the media and having that, and really
I think we could go back and forth on this one.
Yeah, seriously, hosting really a conversation with folks in journalism. This has never been a more critical time for journalism and journalists to bring the truth forward. So addressing the lies being shared in social media, creating restrictions and monitoring social media platforms, that's accountability that Congress can actually be stepping up and being a bit more aggressive on, holding hearings, and also establishing laws and expectations for those who are using the information superhighway of the internet. I think Congress has an important role to play there. And then also, creating formats so that we can engage in dialogue. It seems like we haven't been this divided in my lifetime. And, we have different ideas out there on how to approach the challenges that we're facing. Those are healthy debates. Those are healthy conversations. The beauty of our country is that we have so many different perspectives and ideas. The challenge we're facing is that we don't have that common baseline of reality. And so when we have a common baseline of pure facts, that allows us to engage in the conversations we need to have the different ideas on how to approach the common challenges we're facing. I can tell you it's frustrating for me as a candidate to be running against someone who's flooding the airwaves and also sending out all sorts of flyers that are simply untrue. But it's the advantage of corporate PAC money and trying to balance out the reality of what's being said and what's actually true.
I learned something from this next question. So Jamie, would you support the muster in, muster out process, which would electronically send all of a serviceman's medical information to the VA medical system Instead of making veterans, many with various ailments labor through a process in order to receive the assistance promised upon enlistment?
So this starts from the big picture concept of we need to support our troops. If we are going to ask people to serve our country, once someone takes that oath, we support them when they're in uniform, and we have a sacred obligation to support them when they come home. I'm absolutely committed to that, and I feel very strongly about that because people are putting themselves on the line for our country and come back sometimes with seen and sometimes unseen wounds. So this question that you're asking is essentially saying, do we make sure we provide access to the resources that our veterans have rights to? Absolutely. And do we make sure that they are aware of the resources that are available to them? Absolutely. A question will come up about protecting their information and securing their information. That's something that has to be part of this. That's really important. But we have a sacred obligation to our troops and to our veterans. And so, and to the point I mentioned before, so many come back with unseen wounds. And so there's multiple barriers to readjusting, especially if you've been in a hot zone, in a war zone. It impacts you in a way you can't fully understand. I didn't fully appreciate this until my work in a post-war environment. But when you see that level of destruction and you sit in the homes with people who have identified their kids in a mass grave, there's a level of trauma to your body that you can't even explain when you come back. We need to protect our troops who have that, and also protect our troops in uniform. Again, I'm running against someone who actually, during the pandemic, voted against protective measures to prevent both our veterans and our active service duty members from being harassed by debt collectors. We need to safeguard and protect the folks who are protecting us.
Would you commit to holding town halls in your district on a regular basis?
That's the job, right? That's the job. So a hard yes on that one. And there's a couple of things too. I mean, there's the in-person events, which I absolutely love, and that engagement. And then also finding opportunities for people to express feedback and provide feedback. That's an opportunity for you as a representative to really learn from your community. And the other thing really important is have these town halls in urban and rural areas. I'm a lifelong Democrat, a rural Democrat. I have learned so much from engaging with some of my Republican friends and folks in the community who may have a different identity of political affiliation, but still have needs, and having that ear to the ground is critically important. And then also, of course, virtual conversations. When I'm in DC, I'll be making sure that staying up on those and providing those opportunities. But the face-to-face is really of great value. So yes, every year, every county at the very minimum. But what I would like to do is have much more frequently than that, because again, first and foremost, it's the job. And then also it's a way to make sure you're doing your job well and learning as you go. The challenge we're seeing right now is when we have folks, and this is a new district, so over half the district is new, but I'm running against someone who's been in the office for 25 years, does not have his ear to the ground. It doesn't understand the reality of what we're facing, whether it's the wildfire challenges of wildfire, whether it's the economic struggles that families are going through. And so having that face-to-face conversation really helps you to develop that understanding, so you're truly serving your community and not just hearing from your corporate donors.
Jamie, high quality early education promotes kindergarten readiness while providing much needed childcare for our workforce. Where do you stand on universal pre-K, and do you support the expansion of childcare support as part of the Build Back Better plan?
Absolutely. So I'm a child, the daughter of a retired educator. In addition to universal pre-K, there's also fully funding IDEA. There's so many investments we can be making in our youth and in our students. This is a real opportunity to drive our economic engine. This is a real opportunity to build healthier families and to provide the resources so families can get on their feet, get back on their feet, and be able to be engaging in the economy. It's actually a long-term cost savings. So if someone's just interested in the cost and the conversation, but this is really, we're a wealthy country. We have the opportunity to do this. And this is a great example of an investment in our kids. I actually think we should be looking not just at early childhood childhood education, but also more investments in K through 12. We can be bringing down class sizes through, there's a series of techniques that I could talk about for that, but the pressure on our K through 12 educators is phenomenal. We have people leaving the profession mid-year. Is a challenge we've never seen before because it's been so stressful on our educators. They are helping us prepare for the future. We must invest in them. And then also post high school. So whether someone's going to trade school, going through a professional track, through college, going on to community college, provide the base, we should be making those investments. Also looking at student debt relief. These are all long-term investments to engage folks. As a mother, as a stepmom of 4, I'm seeing our kids struggle and be afraid of going into and investing in themselves and their future because they're afraid of going into debt. We have to be encouraging younger folks to invest in themselves. That's setting the stage for a healthy future and a healthy economy.
Jamie, it's no secret that land and home sales are at all-time high here in Deschutes County. Water is also in short supply. Do you have a plan to preserve the quality of life for people who live and work in Deschutes County?
Well, so this ties into a couple different levels of government. There's what the cities do at the local level. There's the county level discussions. Land use, of course, is a decision made at the local and regional level. And so what the federal government can be doing is providing the investments to help assist with things like affordable housing, provide incentives to enable first responders to live and in the communities that they work in. The same with educators as well. So there are investments that we can be making at the federal level to provide the resources to local communities to figure out how to make the decisions at the local level so that they can get that work done. That's the main role at the federal level. And then, here in Central Oregon, especially, we have a lot of public land, both state and federal. It's also protecting those resources so that people have a place to work and play and to recreate and to enjoy nature. I mean, nothing defines Oregonians more than our love of nature and the outdoors and the stuff we do. And so making sure that we're also protecting those resources for the future, managing as appropriate to protect from wildfire, but also managing those resources for the future is a way to establish that healthy life balance, but providing the resources so that local communities can get the job done is more of the federal government's role.
Jamie, do you support Congress providing additional funds to build resiliency into our COVID response at this time?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that part of that emergency preparedness. The state is doing some work already on this, but this is a great opportunity for a partnership at the federal level as well. And so again, these are investments. It's that expression of being penny wise and pound foolish. If you make a small investment in emergency preparedness now, you help communities, you help save lives and property when we face disasters and natural disasters. That's why the investments in both Build Back Better and the infrastructure bill were so important. And again, a contrast in this race, Kurt Schrader worked to strip out some of the sustainable energy programs from the infrastructure bill and from Build Back Better that were going to be key investments in helping us to build up some of the resiliency to help protect our communities in the long run. If you spend most of your time outside of Oregon and don't really spend time on the ground, you don't necessarily see that reality that Oregonians are facing. And again, last year we were on the verge, we were right on the edge of the evacuation line. We had to flee our home. I've worked in communities where people have lost their homes. And so this sense of the threats that pose to us without this type of preparation is very real to all Oregonians.
Jamie, CD5 is a new district, and if you remember all of the counties that seem to have some piece of it, Bend, Clackamas, Deschutes, Jefferson, Lynn, Marion, and Multnomah, the idea was that there was going to be a commonality of interest in the creation of this district. Are you finding that as you go out and campaign throughout this portion of the district or this piece?
Yeah, I really am. And actually, so the newly drawn district now extends from the Selwood Bridge to Sun River as a kind of a shortstop for it. But we have urban and rural areas like like throughout our state. And what's so exciting about CD5 is it's really kind of a microcosm of Oregon and a microcosm of our country. So those partnerships and bringing folks together across that urban-rural divide is something that I find really exciting. You know, Bend is one of the most exciting places in the country right now in terms of the growth and the development and those opportunities for the trajectory that Bend is on. Those same things and those same opportunities are in the South Metro area. So the opportunity to work together and to develop, rebounding from the COVID economy and also providing economic opportunities is a real exciting opportunity in this district. In Albany as well, I met with the mayor and he's supporting my run. And we were talking about economic development in those regions and how the different areas tie together. In our rural areas as well, everything from the challenges of the mega drought that we're in, but also helping especially small family farmers get through this tough time. That's part of the work I'm doing on OWEB, the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, which I serve all Oregonians on right now. Some of that drought recovery piece, but also engaging and investing in more sustainable practices, regenerative agriculture. These are incentives that we can providing resources for to help our economy, both at the rural level and at the urban level grow. But the common challenges we're facing across are the basic ones I said before: housing, healthcare, childcare, and also this fear of the challenges we're facing, investing in education, but also the fear of the impact of our changing climate.
I think there's some hope or expectation that the creation of this district is going to raise the profile of Bend, given the way this district has been shaped. Do you feel, I mean, we've always somewhat been in the shadow of the Willamette Valley and a lot of Willamette Valley communities. Do you think that that's going to be a reality moving forward?
Absolutely, it would with me as a representative. I'm very, very proud. My wife and I live just outside Terrebonne. I'm really proud of what Central Oregon has to offer the state and the nation in terms of showing the leadership in economic development and housing. Again, there's some really exciting things that the city of Bend is doing now in terms of developing some housing models. There's just a lot of really exciting things that are happening in Central Oregon. Now, that's also true with other parts of the district, but this newly drawn district really provides an opportunity for Central Oregon to shine. And one of the concerns I have, and frankly, when the new lines were drawn, I had folks throughout the district, from the Bend area and Deschutes up through Clackamas and Lynn County and Marion County as well, Portland, reach out and ask me to run for this seat because they said you can bridge the divide, you understand the issues and the challenges that people are facing, and you can also help to highlight the real strengths and bring people together to address our common challenges, but also to really help the community grow. We live in a rural area now, and I grew up rural, actually finished high school in Southern Oregon. But I've also lived in urban areas and served on a city council in Silicon Valley. So I've worked with both high-tech companies as well as rural farmers and ag areas, and with both affluent and less affluent communities. And we're a microcosm of that, and bringing folks together to really focus on putting our best self forward is something I'm excited about doing in Congress.
Jamie, that concludes the question portion of the Zoom. We'd like to give you 5 minutes for closing if you'd like to take the time.
Well, sure. Thank you. And thank you again to the City Club of Central Oregon, to League of Women Voters for hosting this. I'm sorry you didn't get a back and forth with myself and Kurt Schrader. I know he had committed to doing it and then backed out. And so it really lost an opportunity for Central Oregonians to hear about what our different vision is, hear about our track record, what we've actually accomplished, and also to get some perspective on all the TV ads you're seeing and the shiny flyers you're seeing. One of the things that my father-in-law, who lives in Redmond, and he ranched, and he was chuckling about the pictures on some of the flyers about bucking hay without gloves. I bucked hay as a kid, and you just don't do that. So this sense of trust that's built up from someone who's actually walked the walk and doing the work versus kind of the stage photos and what you're seeing. You know, When I was young, I recall how hard my mom worked. She was a single mom with 2 kids, how hard she worked to make ends meet. And that's what so many Oregonians are facing today. She would, when rent would go up, our food budget would go down. Those are the challenges that many are facing. Yes, we've got some affluent folks, but we also have a lot of people who are just getting by day to day. I lived overseas. I've lived in urban areas and rural areas, but as I mentioned, finished high school in Southern Oregon, really proud to live in Central Oregon and in a rural area. I had to pay my own way through college and law school. And so I really have a sense of and understand how hard it is to make ends meet. And that's, again, what so many Oregonians are facing today. And that's where we're seeing this huge divide, not just between between the Republican and Democratic Party, but even within the Democratic Party, the sense of more of those who are feeling desperate and wanting those in office to respond to the challenges that they're experiencing. Bringing people together to have those conversations, I think, is really important. My background is in civil engineering, city and regional planning, and natural resource law. I'm currently a small business owner and emergency recovery coordinator, and as mentioned, have led wildfire recovery efforts as an interim city manager in a city that lost 1/3 of its homes and businesses to wildfire. The challenges we're facing are very real to me, and that's the work I want to do in Congress on behalf of Oregonians. Because, across the political divide, regardless of party affiliation, what I have found is we all just want to put a roof over our head and food on our table. We want opportunities for our kids, and we want healthcare for our families when they're sick without going bankrupt. We want to be able to afford our prescription drug prices and actually afford them, not just have talk, but be able to go down to CVS or Walgreens today and make sure that they are affordable. We also don't want to have to flee our homes because of wildfire. We don't want to lose our family farms because of the drought. So these are all the challenges that Oregonians are facing. And so, having a champion who would address the helping people recover from the COVID economy, helping to address a climate that's in crisis, and then also helping to protect our democracy is really what I'm about and why I want to represent Oregonians in Congress. The takeaway from living in Central Oregon, I think, is that we understand how interdependent we are on each other, and we need to work together to overcome our challenges. But our democracy is, it shouldn't be for sale. We should have to earn our right to represent our district, and it shouldn't be something that can just be bought or sold, no matter how much dumping you get of corporate PAC money in the race. I'm a Central Oregonian. I am running against someone who doesn't spend a lot of time in the state. Our home is in Central Oregon, and he owns 4 homes across the country. I'm really proud of the support I have here in Central Oregon from folks like Phil Chang and Tammy Bainey, current and former county commissioners, but also across the district. 4 of the county Democratic parties, from Deschutes, Lynn, Marion, and even Kurt's home county of Clackamas, are all endorsing me in this primary, because there's a sense of wanting a new person for a new vision, new leadership for a new vision. Over half the district is new, 53%. And those of us who really want to make sure that we're addressing these challenges that we're facing are working together. That's why I was asked to run, and that's why I've stepped up and want to serve. The bottom line is it's about public service. I have a lifelong commitment to public service and on the ground experience on facing the challenges that Oregonians are facing. So my website is jamiefororegon.com. Would be honored to serve you in Congress. Would love to get your vote in the primary, which is coming up in mid-May. And if you'd like to participate, again, jamiefororegon.com, and getting engaged or volunteering or contributing would be much appreciated. But thanks to everyone. Thanks for this opportunity to have this conversation, and look forward to seeing you out on the campaign trail.
Thank you to Jamie McLeod Skinner for participating in the League of Women Voters of Deschutes County and City Club of Central Oregon Congressional District 5 Forum. Your vote is your voice. Make sure to get your ballots in by May 17th so your voice can be heard. The next forum in the series will be Thursday, April 21st, and will be the Republican congressional candidates for District 5, and will be available on the cityclubco.org YouTube channel at 7 p.m. I'm Aaron Switzer, publisher of the Source Weekly. It has been an honor to moderate the Democratic Congressional District 5 League of Women Voters of Deschutes County City Club of Central Oregon Forum. That's a mouthful, and grateful to do it. Thanks for being with us.